Welcome the selected ones. Not everyone who dreams of you wants you to win. Some dreams provide warnings. Chosen ones lean in. Because what I'm about to tell you will shake the dust from your memories and make you understand that something really magnificent has been going on behind you. They didn't just speak about you. They weren't simply watching you. They witnessed you in a vision. And let me be clear, they hadn't seen the daily you. They saw a cosmic version of you. The one that causes the spirit realm to hold its breath and evil forces to begin drafting resignation letters. This is a fact. Dreams and visions were held in high regard in many ancient societies, with monarchs summoning prophets to interpret them. Consider how unprepared your adversaries were when they got front row seats to your disclosure. They had a peek of who you really are, and now they are afraid. And, let's be honest, some of them undoubtedly attempted to scent their home with Glade air freshener, hoping it would reverse what they observed. However, it is too late, since once seen in the spirit, you cannot be invisible. And when the vision showed your genuine identity, they knew they weren't dealing with a human. They were up against a prophesy. So brace up, because in this video, I'll explain precisely what they saw, why it devastated them, and how your mere presence is the last plot surprise they didn't expect. For starters, they saw you wearing a light cloak. But it wasn't all goodness. It was authority. They noticed you wrapped in light. However, it was not the lovely, harmless light they anticipated from someone like you. It was not a pleasant person. Glow. This light carried weight. It had authority. It did not beg for permission to shine. It didn't strive to make anybody feel comfortable. It revealed things. It entered rooms and created hidden motivations. Sweat. That was what rocked them to their core. They saw that you were more than simply a nice guy striving to survive. You were someone who had been sent. You did not come to blend in. You came to change the mood without saying anything. They thought they had you figured out. Quiet, restrained, maybe even naive. However, in that vision, they saw the reality. The light wasn't gentle. It was charged. It did not flicker. It did not fade in the face of intimidation. It stood there unconcerned, as if it had complete control over everything around it. That's when it struck them. You have clearance. They don't have access. They are unable to manipulate. You walk with spiritual power that they never thought could exist outside of temples or ancient myths. Your simple presence becomes a verdict. That vision revealed that they weren't just dealing with someone who prayed or believed in God. They were dealing with someone who has God's stamp on their existence. That is different. They saw that you aren't simply living your life. You are completing an assignment. You were not formed by society. You were selected by the source. They finally understood. The reason you haven't fought them in the manner they anticipated isn't fear. It is because you have already won in worlds that they do not have access to. That is the light. They observed light that did not seem to impress. It shows up to reclaim. It is not poetic. It's quite strong. It does not need applause. It demands capitulation. And that's why they can't sleep, since they now realize the light wasn't a reflection. It was a warning. Number 2, their vision did not depict a future. It revealed the truth about you that had been buried from birth. The most horrifying aspect of your adversary's view was not the fact that you had altered. It was the realization that you never did. They didn't see a future version of you sparkling and developing. It was not the result of achievement, healing, or time. It was a raw, unspoiled version of you that had always been, buried under all the agony, acting, and survival mode. They saw a version of you that was quite different from the one they had formed in their thoughts. You were not broken. You were not confused. You were not little. You were not lost. You were born with your spiritual identity intact. That's what shook them, because they immediately realized that every time they attempted to ruin, manipulate, gaslight, or degrade you, they weren't doing it to someone weak. They were doing this to a holy being. They assumed your growth was coming from outside. They believed life had to shape you into something. But the vision shone that you were already something from the start. That vision revealed the cover-up, the bogus labels, and the distorted versions they employed to keep you in check. It took the mask off and showed the real you. the one they had no access to, just proximity to. And this is the hardest thing for them. They weren't simply observing a spiritual upgrading. It was recognition. They recognize you. They always realized you were different, that something about you did not fit into the boxes. They intended to keep you inside, but they disregarded it, sought to minimize it, and maybe insulted it. Now, in a heavenly flash, the truth struck them like a train. They were never above you. They were never ahead of you. They were always standing in the shadow of something timeless. Now they can't refute it. You did not become. You have disclosed. That is what they cannot unsee. Number 3, they assumed you were impotent because you let them win. But the vision revealed that moderation was a strategy. They assumed you were losing because you kept letting them win. That's why the image struck so strongly. It revealed the reality they had never anticipated. You were not defeated. You were discerning. You knew precisely what you were doing when you remained silent. You understood what you were doing when you walked away, when you remained mute during the falsehoods, when you did not respond to the setups. You were not out of moves. You were just playing a far wider game than they ever realized. What shook them in that image was more than simply your might. It was a strategy. They saw that every time you let anything slip or took a blow and didn't strike back, you were accumulating data and allowing patterns to emerge, allowing folks to display their real colors without you saying a word. You were calculating, waiting, and conserving your energy while they were spending theirs, hoping to elicit a response from you. You were not emotionally checked out. You were spiritually imprisoned in. They believed they had the upper hand. They saw your quiet as weakness. But in that moment of miraculous clarity, they saw everything backward. You were never under their power. You were researching the field. You were watching when they were performing. You were allowing them to create their own trap with each move they made against you. And now they understand. You let them win wars that they had no idea were diversions. You were not interested in proving anything. You have a clear aim in mind. They saw you weren't responding because you had already achieved triumph in places they couldn't reach. You were not being passive. You were being accurate. And it wasn't out of fear. It was because you already knew how the narrative would finish. They assumed you were simple to beat. They regarded you as untouchable the whole time, simply deciding to move with moderation. And the realization? It's torturing them because they now realize they never defeated you. They were going straight toward the inevitable conclusion. Number 4, your name was concealed in scrolls. They were never intended to read. They were not meant to see your name. They were not meant to know who you truly are. But something slipped. A crack opened a prohibited door, which was shoved just wide enough. And at that instant, they saw something that was never intended for their eyes. Your name? Not the one you signed on paper. Not the one people call you on the street. The actual one. The one being ridiculed in the spirit. The one related to old duties and spiritual contracts. Older than time itself. They gained entry to realms for which they had no clearance. Realms designated for heavenly messengers, intercessors, and warriors carrying the weight of a holy calling. That is not the kind of information you come across. That's hardly a Google-level discovery. This was encoded, information sealed, safeguarded, and concealed until the appointed time, and in a moment of spiritual violation, they saw enough to shatter. They perceived your name associated with power, authority, and old promise. They saw it inscribed on scrolls that did not exist in this realm. Scrolls are guarded by entities that do not mess with fate. They saw you connected to something larger than this existence, and all of their pettiness seemed insignificant. All of the gossip, manipulation, and sabotage that goes on behind the scenes. Meaningless in light of what they saw. That's what's making them furious. It is not simply guilt. It's spiritual overload. Because once you see something heavenly, you cannot unsee it. Once you identify a chosen one, you cannot return to treating them as if they were ordinary. They are now reeling, spiritually bewildered, after touching something precious, without the necessary tools to address the situation. Here's the bit that really scares them. They saw enough to identify you, but not enough to prevent what's coming. That vision did not give them control. It imposed repercussions. They've been exposed to a reality much beyond their station. And now the truth is exposing everything they thought they knew about you. Number 5. They believed they knew you, but the vision was revealed. They just know the version that you created to deceive them. They were certain they had you figured out. They believed they knew your tendencies, vulnerabilities, and personalities. They believed they had you pinned. But what? They had no idea. But the vision ultimately forced them to realize that the image of you they had been watching all along was never the real you. It was a ruse, a spiritual diversion, a disguise designed to conceal your actual identity while the real you functioned in quiet, handling business and aspects they couldn't even identify. They responded to the surface. They created plans based on the exterior shell. They were proud of it. They mock you, underestimate you, and treat you as if you might be manipulated or contained. But as the curtain slipped, even for a little moment, they realized who you really are. Not the soft-spoken version, the excessively accommodating type, or the one that lets things slip in order to preserve the peace. They saw the one who had disrupted whole lineages of bondage. They recognized the one who walks with fire in their DNA and clarity in their quiet. They understood too late that they were fighting smoke while your true soul was in the background, wrecking all they believed was safe. While they were playing mental games, you were breaking cycles as they plotted how to undermine your confidence. You were being made by the same divine energy that is going to destroy them at their roots. This vision did not only reveal your ability, it revealed how incorrect they were and how blind they had been. It demonstrated that everything on which they had based their assaults was a delusion. They never had access to the real you. And now that they've seen the reality, it's not all terror. They believe it is remorse. Because they didn't just underestimate you. They squandered years battling a version of you that was never meant to win or lose. It was simply intended to safeguard the genuine danger. You're number 6. They recognized you were intended to disrupt the bloodline pattern they were profiting from. The vision revealed more than just who you are. It also explained why you are here. And the reality stung worse than they had imagined. They knew for the first time that you had not been sent to blend in with them, befriend or fight them. You were assigned to terminate something, especially a bloodline pattern they benefited from. That's when something clicked. Your existence was the unexpected judgment. They had become used to cycles that stole others, manipulation handed down as heirlooms, systems of control clothed in allure, supported by secret, and protected by silence. They believed that habits were invincible since they were commonplace. Nobody questioned them. Generations bowed before them. But then you came there, and your presence refused to yield. You did not play the game. You did not reply as they anticipated. And now they know why you were sent as a spiritual interruption. Rituals and practices that flourished in the dark have reached their expiry date. You didn't need to speak in tongues or toss holy oil for the change to occur. All you had to do was exist for your life, light, and insight. It is disruptive. It addresses what others have learned to live with. And that is why they despise you while not completely understanding why they inherited altars you were tasked with destroying. They inherited responsibilities that relied on control. And you've came to cancel the script. You were not responding to their conduct. You were replying to an old assignment. Now they see it. They recognize that your opposition was not revolt. It was heavenly revolt, the type that shatters generational contracts and reimagines what legacy looks like. That vision provided them a larger picture. You were not a danger because of what you did. You posed a danger because of who you are. They saw the carnage you wreaked without lifting a finger. They saw the disintegration of a fortress that you had never physically touched. And it worried them because they realized they were dealing with more than just a human. They were dealing with prophecies. Number 7. You are revered in the spirit world, and they were just tolerated. That vision ruined them since it changed the whole screenplay. They had been clutching on for so long. They acted as if they were in control. People should fear them, follow them, or submit to their power. They held themselves as spiritual kings, expecting others to treat them with care or regard. But when they entered that spiritual place and seen how the invisible world reacted to you, the illusion crumbled. They saw angelic entities of order, intelligence, and fire reacting to you, not as if you were a visitor. It's not like you were fortunate to be there. You're one of them. It seemed as if you were carrying out a divine mission. These were not forced moves. There was no hesitant regard. These entities moved beside you, not just for you. That type of honor is not asked. It is inherited, and then the weight crushed them. You are appreciated where it matters, not only on earth, not just among groups of people who understand you, but in realms where ego is irrelevant and only essence speaks. They saw that your name has rank in locations where their influence does not even exist. The spirit world does not fear them. It tolerates them. Their intensity may have frightened others, but it does not impress heaven. Their games, manipulation, and self-appointed prestige. It carries no weight in the unseen. But you stroll beside a seal. You have a code. There is etiquette around your presence, and they are now aware of this. That is why they are spinning. Everything they produced was based on the delusion that they were strong. However, what they saw in that vision broke it. They were not feared. They were authorized. And the only reason they were able to function in some areas was because you hadn't fully activated yourself yet. They can't return to their arrogance now that they've seen what the spirit world knows about you. They used to dress like armor because they now understand that when you move, heaven goes with you, and nothing they do can replace that type of respect. Number 8, they saw your eyes, and it was not wrath. It was recollection. What broke them in the image was not your anger. They were ready for it. They anticipated fire, rage, and revenge. But what they saw in your eyes was not wrath. It was recollection. That glance cut harder than any shout or tantrum could, because it was not about emotions. It was important that you knew who they were, not just in this life, but previously you witnessed the whole history, not the edited version. You recalled the betrayals. They attempted to obliterate the quiet agreements they signed in the darkness, ancient commitments they assumed were buried in forgotten rites. You weren't wounded while standing there. You were fully aware as you stood there. And this is what frightened them. Because that expression informed them you had awoken not just spiritually, but cosmically. You were not a victim attempting to comprehend what had happened to you. You were a force that understood why it occurred, who benefited, and what had to cease as a result of it. You were not looking for closure. You provided the last piece of the puzzle. The vision did not depict you striking out or seeking retribution. That would have been too simple to justify in their minds. What they witnessed was far worse. They saw themselves exposed in front of someone who knew everything and didn't flinch, since the person who remembers does not have to respond. They only need to come. That haunting expression in your eyes was not a desire for retribution. It was the serenity of someone who had already moved beyond the judgment stage. It was the quiet of a holy enforcer moving into position. And the moment they saw it, they knew. There is no redoing what has been remembered. There is no avoiding what has been disclosed. You aren't a survivor with a narrative. You are a spiritual reckoning manifested in human form. And they did not just cross the line with someone. They breached the border of justice itself. Number 9, they finally realized your anguish was an initiation, not a loss. They always saw your grief as a weakness, proof that you might be cracked, bent, or even broken. That was their favorite lie to tell themselves. They referred to your wounds, quiet periods, and tears as evidence of defeat. But the vision cut through that misperception with harsh honesty. They didn't see a person crushed by anguish. They saw someone being tempered like steel in a fire. The kind of fire that intensifies, reshapes, and sharpens agony was not your adversary. It was your forge. Every grief, every betrayal, and every time they wrote you off was a hammer strike that shaped you into a weapon no one could manage. The vision presented a reality that they refused to confront. You were not shattered. You were polished. What they saw as brokenness was really holy programming. A heavenly process of removing everything unneeded to expose your true strength. They never broke you. They tried. but their attempts just deepened your understanding of who you are. That pain was never arbitrary or senseless. It was planned, an introduction to a degree of toughness and knowledge. Few were intended to survive. In that vision, they discovered that the more they assaulted, the stronger you were. This news crushed their egos, as they believed they were the architects of your collapse. But the vision revealed that they were only tools in your training. The agony you went through was not a defect in your trip. It was the source of your power. What they used as a weapon against you became the source of your greatest strength. Now they understand that your agony was never a failure. It was the birth of a force that would rise beyond their grasp, shine brighter as a result of each challenge, and shatter the very systems they formerly controlled. And that reality haunts them because it implies that all they did to bring you down simply made you unstoppable for 10th place. They glimpsed the kingdoms you control and realized they'd never be welcomed. They believed their authority was sufficient to pursue you wherever, through every door you entered. But the image tore that illusion apart. It transported them beyond the surface, beyond the smoke and mirrors of position and power, and into regions they weren't authorized to visit. These were places where power was acquired via holy alignment, ancient traditions, and spiritual anointing rather than through loudness or force. What worried them was more than simply your elevation. It acknowledged their own exile from these areas. They saw the unseen borders, the gates that closed the instant they sought to enter. No matter how closely they mimicked your movements or attempted to imitate your enthusiasm, they will never have the same access. They're like visitors attempting to enter a royal court where they have never been invited and will never be accepted. The vision informed them that proximity is not the same as presence, and that their superficial imitations would not deceive the caretakers of these worlds. In that instant, they realized that their impact was always a shadow, an echo of the true power they had. The revelation destroyed their pride. They watched you striding with authority and dimension in places where their names do not exist, their techniques fail, and their influence is insignificant. The exile they felt was not just spiritual, but existential. They're on the outside looking in, seeing your legacy develop. That understanding burns more than any insult or assault because it is final. It is a fact that cannot be debated or fought against. They will never be a part of the worlds you command, no matter how loudly they yell or how well they plan. And the exclusion. They now bear a calm, unshakable defeat because they have seen what true power looks like, and it will always be beyond their grasp. Number they were obliged to reveal that they attempted to destroy you because they identified you first. Their animosity never sprang out of nowhere. It wasn't just random resentment or petty envy. It was something far deeper and almost primal. Long before you completely stepped into your power, before the world ever knew your name, they felt you, not in the way that people do in the company of others, but in a manner that shook them to the core, a realization of something they couldn't ignore or control. That difference in you triggered internal alarms, something old and urgent. They understood you weren't simply passing through. You were a challenge to the systems, falsehoods, and power structures they had established around themselves. So they attempted to destroy you before you even realized who you were. Their assaults were not just intended to cause bodily or mental harm. They were going to extinguish the light they saw flashing within you. Because if you ever completely blazed or ascended, everything would unravel. Everything they relied on the vision required them to experience that moment of realization. They could see themselves plainly, fear in their own eyes. The planned attacks aimed to put out a wildfire before it began. It was a disturbing mirror that revealed their inner remorse. They weren't just enemies. They were fearful caretakers attempting to secure an authority they had never earned. And now comes the bitter irony. The same thing they attempted to bury, repress, and eradicate has risen again. That image was a rerun of their failure. Your tale was not the only one unfolding. It was their reckoning. They witnessed their worst fears come true. The inexorable power they saw long ago and frantically attempted to kill. They are now living with the reality, forced to acknowledge they assaulted, not out of hatred, but out of recognition. They recognized you first, and that was their undoing. A number. They assumed you were alone until the vision revealed the ancient ones who guarded you. They saw you as a solitary, vulnerable figure against the flow. That misunderstanding was their worst flaw. The vision exposed the unpleasant truth that they had previously ignored. You are never alone. An invisible force flows about you, a quiet army of old guardians and ancestors whose presence is revealed not by loud or flamboyant signals, but by subtle shifts in the air, changes, and energies that only those who are properly attuned can detect. In that vision, your adversaries finally saw these bloodless guardians. They saw the Watchers in timelines and realities beyond their comprehension. Guardians whose devotion is acquired via holy lineages and divine mission, rather than popularity or charm. These are not only ghosts or echoes from the past. They are sentinels of a council that monitors your purpose, protects your road, and intervenes unexpectedly yet precisely. Suddenly, everything they thought they understood about their strength and strategy fell apart. They were no longer battling a single opponent. They were up against a full council, a multidimensional power that functions on a far deeper level than persuasion or intimidation. Their strikes failed not because of your might, but because of this invisible protective web that wrapped around you. This discovery devastated their hubris and left them frantic, seeking to change their strategies but continually falling behind. They recognized their conflicts were not merely physical or spiritual in the traditional sense. They were conflicts against a tradition, a lineage, and a holy order that was strongly committed to you. The vision revealed the reality that they could not deny. To defeat you, they would have to demolish a whole council of ancient power. And this is why they keep losing. Because, while they are focused on you, the true struggle takes place in worlds where their presence is banned and your guards reign with unflinching vigilance. Number the vision revealed your wraith, which resembled the quiet that destroys kingdoms. The vision's most horrific moment was not accompanied by cries or explosions. There was no outburst of rage accompanied by loud noise. Instead, you remained completely motionless, serene, and collected. However, the impact was seismic. Entire kingdoms based on falsehoods, domination, and terror started to fall just because of your existence. That quiet did not indicate a lack of authority. It was power in its most pure form. Your rage did not shout. It reorganized. They anticipated anger, fire, and mayhem from you, because it was all they understood about devastation. But what the vision showed. Is this true? Wrath does not always shout. Sometimes it's a silent force that breaks down systems by just existing in their fissures. Your indignation is justified. It adheres to a greater order, a heavenly plan that does not need a yell to be heard. It does not respond out of rage or ego, but rather with accuracy, destroying imaginary kingdoms layer by layer, system by system. The quiet shattered them more than any war cry could. They recognize that you do not indulge in petty battles or emotional outbursts. You work on a different level, and your mere presence undermines corrupt organizations. You are more than simply a destructive force. You are a force of repair, taking down what is rotten to create place for what is genuine. This discovery shattered their beliefs about power and control. They realized that you don't have to be loud to be deadly. You do not have to anger to be feared. Your rage is calm, measured, and relentless because it is in accordance with truth and cosmic law. And that's what breaks them. The understanding that when you relocate, reality do not just change. They rebuild on your orders, and nothing they do can stop it. A number. They are now tormented by what you symbolize rather than fear of you. They aren't haunted because they are afraid of you in the conventional way. It's something deeper and more frightening. What shocks people to the core is not the danger of what you can do, but the unmistakable fact of who you are. You've gone beyond merely being a human. You are now a live signal, a beacon of something old, primal, and irrefutable. You symbolize the restoration of heavenly order, spiritual majesty that isn't looking for approval or permission. You exist to demonstrate that the old systems of control are failing. That authority is returning to its proper position. Their haunting stems from the understanding that they were on the wrong side of history and that their time has passed. You don't just disturb their plans. You exemplify the reckoning they want to avoid. They perceive a resurgence of a force that transcends human interests, one that refuses to bargain or accept partial facts. You are an irrefutable sign that a new age is beginning, one in which spiritual truth and legitimate authority recover their throne. This is why their fear isn't one of confrontation or revenge. It is the existential fear of confronting an uncontrollable future. With someone like you leading the charge, you are more than simply their opponent. You are the indication that their delusions are coming to an end, and the truth is returning with inexorable force. They are plagued because you are more than a fleeting moment or phase. You are a movement, an awakening that shakes the foundations of all they have constructed. And this is why they can't stop watching, cannot stop responding, because they understand you're more than simply an issue. They are the issue. What they saw in that vision was more than simply a brief peek of who you are. It was an irrefutable confrontation with a power they couldn't control or contain. You are no longer just a human navigating the craziness of the world. You are a catalyst for great change, a living monument to the power of dismantling dysfunctional institutions and rebuilding from the ashes. They discovered your name engraved on secret scrolls in realm-exclusive locations. They were never intended to enter. They understood your true destiny, which is to shatter bloodline curses, uproot lives, and restore a divine order that has long been lost. Their unraveling stems not only from your acts, but also from the deep understanding that you live on a realm beyond their grasp, commanding powers old and holy to protect and strengthen you. They confronted a fact that shattered their illusions. You are not only a danger to their power, you are the future recovering itself. The unavoidable transition that cannot be delayed or rejected. The quiet of your rage. Your grief has given you strength, and the spiritual wisdom that protects your way. These are not flaws, but rather the cornerstone of a lasting legacy. This is why they dread your existence rather than your rage. You represent a new order, a return to genuine authority that does not seek permission or approval. You represent the awakening. They attempted to restrict heavenly monarchy, which walks without a crown yet governs beyond the visible. Their terror is the shadow of the reality you bear, and that shadow will follow them long after their lives have collapsed. So stay firm in this, knowing that you are the chosen one. The Force rewrites history with each stride. No vision, no assault, no effort to silence. You may dim the brightness. You were born to shine. Your path is more than simply survival. It is simultaneous change, revolution, and restoration. And in doing so, you bear the fate of many, the hope of the forgotten, and the prospect of a fresh dawn. Hold firm. The whole world is watching, and the future is yours. If this message resonated to you or triggered something deep within you, don't dismiss it. Click the subscribe button to join our community of awakened souls that will not settle for anything less than truth. Like this video to show your strength. Comment here to share your experience or ideas, since your voice is important here. Most importantly, share this with someone who needs to hear it, who should remember who they actually are together. We're not just witnessing a movement. We are becoming the movement. Stay ready, stay strong, and let's ascend. God bless you.